Hello everyone and welcome to an update video on OpenVic2, the project to faithfully recreate Victoria 2 with better multiplayer, performance and modability. We're now a few months into the project and it's been a fantastic time, very interesting and enjoyable. What will this update video talk about specifically? First of all, a recap picking up where the previous video left off, including some great information from the dev diaries and discussion streams that we've done. I'm going to get into the topic of really nailing down where the project stands, what its vision is and what its aims are in a very detailed, clear way. Then we got a couple of shorter topics, a showcase of the artwork being made, and the spreadsheet where all your suggestions have gone. Then we're going to showcase and explain the major progress the project has made regarding the map, and lastly we'll show you the very fun crowdsourcing effort that has been going on lately regarding events and decisions. Throughout this video, in contrast to the previous two, you're actually going to hear from team members, which is excellent. Very important clips edited down from the discussion streams, as well as chats that I've had with them to put in the video. So as always, I on behalf of the whole community thank the team so much for all the great stuff they're doing in general, as well as specifically for helping me with this video, for taking the time to provide some explanations that will go into it, and giving me general feedback about the video as I was making it, correcting me and all that. It's been over 3 months since I put out my last video about OpenVic2, so I think we're long overdue for an update on where the project is at, which to summarise is a very good place. The reason it's been some time since we've had our last update on this channel is that we don't need constant updates and I've been focusing on my main content. I think it's better for the update videos to be less frequent and more substantial rather than the other way round. The initial hype and formation of the project has obviously died down and now things are just progressing along nicely. Some cynical people at the beginning said when the initial hype dies down and all the excitement fades away, it's going to die and it'll be over. Millions of lines of code won't be written. The truth is that OpenVic2 is actually gathering momentum and getting better. It was actually the beginning when things were slow, because the team was starting from scratch and they had to get used to everything, and all the early disagreements about how to approach the project had to be resolved, which they have been. Now that the foundations are laid, things are really ramping up, and summer's just around the corner where people have much more time. The future is very bright. One thing about the project that hasn't changed is that it still doesn't want your money. Something it does want is for you to join the community Discord server, where you can get more regular updates about the project, ask any questions, discuss history for hours on end, and submit some of your own LARP, which we'll talk about later in this video. The community server is the best place to be if you want to know what's going on with the project when I'm not talking about it on my channel. And there's now a showcase channel. This is where members of the team can post nice shiny visuals for people who don't understand the code on the GitHub. Speaking of the GitHub, you either know how it works or you don't. If you do know how it works and you have an account, we'd encourage you to star the project. That would help a lot. You can also build the project and play around with what there is so far. There's a guide for how to do that on here. And we encourage feedback even at this early stage. If you would like to contribute to OpenVic2, the recommended way is to join the team. There's an application form and the first page here shows what we're looking for. So if you have any of these skills, do not hesitate to apply. The team is really easy to join if you have any of these skills. People often come and go and it's not exclusive at all. If you're unsure about any of this, we're very receptive to people just coming onto the community Discord server and asking. Contributing directly on the GitHub without necessarily being on the team is a bit more complicated, but still definitely possible. The main reason we recommend being on the team first and foremost is because development is heavily based around that team and delegating tasks from requirements. As we started from scratch and built the project from the ground up, the standards have needed to be kept very high. This is, to quote Catylist, in order to prevent mounting architectural instability. Also, you don't want to just start coding something and then it turns out someone on the team is already doing that. Like I said, the team is so easy to join that if you're at the point where you're coding something for the GitHub, you'll basically just be accepted on the team if you ask. They also tell me that they fully intend to open up more later to more public contributions. If you have any questions about this, feel free to give them in the comments of this video or on the Discord. Now the obligatory shoutouts and stuff for this channel, which remember is different from supporting OpenVic2. It's just that this channel is my job and one of the things I happen to cover on the channel is OpenVic2 and I have a role on the team. You know, PR man or something like that. This video took a very long time to make and I wouldn't have been able to make it without people supporting my channel, so please give the video a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I have a Discord as well, and can you believe that one of the early suggestions in the project was to use my Discord for OpenVic2, and I rejected that suggestion. Anyway, you can also follow me on Twitch for great live streams, such as playing Crusader Kings 3 multiplayer with DinoStan, where he made a video out of it. And if you'd like to really support this channel, you can join my Patreon where you get some extra perks. Alright, so the first main section of this video is going to be a good recap. The best place to start would be following on directly from the end of the last video. I had this little section here where I said what's next for the project. So I'll quickly go through each of these 5 things and show you how they happened. The first dev diary came out the very next day on the 27th of January. It introduced the leaders of the team and gave an overview of the project's approach. On the same day, to go along with the release of the first dev diary, we did our first discussion stream also as promised. This was very fun and enjoyable to do and hopefully watch, and it was also very informative and we answered so many questions. It was fantastic for people following the project to finally hear from the team members and not just me babbling on all the time. The limitation of this format, however, is that they last for hours, so they'll obviously have less views, so we get way more detailed information about the project and answer so many questions, but it's harder for people to get all that information. That's why I think think it's really important to have this video update, which can hopefully try to compress some of that very useful information into a video format. But I still want to do more discussion streams, and the team members really enjoyed being on them as well. They take place right here on my YouTube channel, so whenever I schedule one you should see it come up in your subscriptions. Maybe I'll look into uploading them onto a different platform afterwards, so that you can easier listen to them in the background while you're, say, working out. Dev Diary number 2 came out a couple of weeks after the first one, and it went into much more detail on the approach of the project and how we're running things. Joe, whose proposal for how to run the project was endorsed by the team in a vote, explained it in the coinciding discussion.
Effectively, our strategy for this project, our whole strategy is to do it quote unquote properly. Take our time with it, make sure we plan it. Loads of projects that are run by, amateurs in their spare time. They'll start off really strong. There's so much enthusiasm. Everyone wants to really work on stuff. People want to rapidly prototype and get everything done. And things do get done really quickly, and it's really exciting. But because people rush to get stuff done so quickly, they don't take the time to properly document it. So you end up getting this spaghetti code encroachment. You can't see it at first. A few months in, it becomes an absolute nightmare to maintain.
Dev Diary 3 was a showcase of some of the artwork and assets that are being made for the project. What I'm going to do is properly show you this artwork after I explain something so that the artwork and assets make a lot more sense. Bear with me on that. The Dev Diaries for OpenVic2 don't have any particular schedule. Catylist puts them together as and when we have something we think we'd like to show the community. And what tends to happen is a discussion stream takes place alongside that to go into way more detail. In this case, it's this video going alongside Dev Diary number 4. The next thing we have here is the hackathon. Now this was a long time ago, but I'll still show you everything because it was very good. It was an opportunity for anyone to submit something code related that might be relevant for the project or just for fun. Hop311 aka Hubert goes over the submissions briefly in discussion stream number 2.
Verkix submitted Godot Grand Strategy Map. It's pretty cool. You've got different states when you mouse over them. They're made with GD script in Godot. Next we have OV2 Hackathon Light Map from Ivysaur, C++ OpenGL world map, where that was pretty cool. You can move the map around, there's a light behind it. After that, we have Myriad Colors, who made a chat room or Vic2 chat box as its own program in Godot. Next, you had a very amazing submission from a very talented individual, Map Engine, which recreated the Vic2 map and tried to make it 3D. That was also made in C++ with OpenGL. And finally, we have a Vic2 defines parser called Bismarckia, which was capable of putting into data structures the Vic2 defines files for provinces. So that's all 5 submissions.
The next thing we have is an official website for the project, which has been done by our resident Dutchman Youri.
There is a website up, openvic2.com, but currently it's kind of a very simple website, a single web page that hosts the most recent Dev Diary.
Obviously, a large amount of the hard work was actually getting that website up and hosting it and doing all that stuff.
Yeah, just hosted it on Azure. That was easy enough, but getting the actual custom domain to work, that was a bit of a hassle. Hooking up the Google Analytics was also kind of tricky.
No one else already had the domain name OpenVic2.com.
No,
so that was
just open for grabs.
Yeah, very lucky we got away with that one. A fully fledged website is something to look forward to in the coming months for the project. It hasn't been the biggest priority because in many ways Discords nowadays take over from what only websites used to be able to do. Right now you can go to the website to see the latest Dev Diary, which is number 4, and we're going to be talking about that one later. And then of course it says development will start, which it did, and it's going well. All 5 promises kept. Now I want to come to a very crucial topic, perhaps the single most important topic for this project and any other projects like it. The defining issue that I talked about even way back in the first video before I had any idea what was going on. Basically, there are 2 ideas, or you could call them approaches or camps. The faithful recreation versus improving, or changing. What I'm going to do here is explain these 2 different visions, what they mean, what is even possible, and what factors might influence which approach to take, and I'll explain the way that OpenVic2 aims to handle this, and how it reconciles both of these things. A faithful recreation of Victoria 2 means exactly what it says, basically the same game. Some people use the word clone. It should at least have improved multiplayer and performance, or else what's the point of doing it? Changing and improving is a very broad thing. It could range from something close to a faithful recreation, with a few tweaks maybe, to something different that you might describe as a Victoria-like game. The possibilities for this are huge, exciting, but also varied, so you'll find a lot of different opinions as to what's best for improvement. What are the limitations of a faithful recreation? Completely doing this is impossible. There are 2 aspects to this, the code and the assets. First of all, the code. Paradox obviously owns the source code of Victoria 2, and it's not accessible to the general public or any Victoria 2 owners, only Paradox. Even if it were accessible, it would not be legally possible for OpenVic2 to do anything with it, without explicit permission from Paradox. So we're very strict on having absolutely nothing to do with it, we're not looking, we don't care about it. Reverse engineering in this sense is not happening. So that code dictates how Victoria 2 works. It gives you the game. What the team is actually doing is studying the results of how Victoria 2 works, aiming to provide the same outcomes, for example how the economy functions. You could call that reverse engineering, but it's important to differentiate it from actually using Vic2's code or looking at it. Therefore, a 100% faithful recreation is off the table, but 100% faithful would have the same performance, multiplayer and modding anyway. Starting from scratch is what this project's all about. It's the exciting part. It's what actually enables the team to do all the great things they plan to do. And not to be complacent, it's also the big challenge. What we can promise is a game that functions extremely similarly to Victoria 2. While the code will be different, the outcomes might not be noticeable. It depends. The vision of OpenVic2 is exactly the same as it has always been, way back in my first video even, which is to first and foremost faithfully recreate as far as possible, with improvements and changes mainly taking place after the game has first been released, or post 1.0 as members of the team will often say. There's actually some very interesting progress to show you about how the team is dealing with this, categorizing various suggestions and stuff, and I'll show you that later. The other aspect of faithful recreation is the assets. This is different from the code that I just talked about. The artwork, the user interface, the icons for pops, units, goods, the text files that contain all the information about the game like the countries and the events, the music, as well as something OpenVic2 has now, a map. These are all things that you can find in your Victoria 2 folder, mostly in formats that you can open and look at yourself. When you launch the game, the program goes into your folder, reads all these files, and arranges them into Victoria 2 for you. If you edit some of these assets and put them into your mod folder, it will load those instead, and that's how you get mods. One of the things that OpenVic2 aims to do is to create a program whose code you can see on our GitHub, which accesses the folder of the Victoria 2 copy that you own, loads the assets and makes it into a game, which has better performance and functioning multiplayer, but looks exactly the same as Victoria 2, and you'll be able to load any existing Victoria 2 mod right off the bat as it is. This is what many other open source recreations do, including this one right here, which is one of the biggest and most successful ones of all time. Bethesda allowed them to do this under some conditions, which goes to show that a big game developer might have many faults, but they're still good when it comes to this. So the question is, are Paradox okay with us doing this? It would be very nice if we knew. So as the project started to come together after that first video, I contacted Paradox's influencer person, openly laying out all of our intentions, hoping for a very constructive relationship. He told me that he would go off and discuss it with other people within Paradox, in order to give me a good informed answer. About a week later he got back to me with an answer in which he's under the impression that OpenVic2 is a mod for Victoria 2. Which is just mind-boggling.
I don't think you fully appreciate the gravity of the situation.
I followed up on that to clarify, but he never responded again. And I'm not sending a second message, I don't want to look needy. I think it's important that you know about that message exchange, because it explains the sort of uncertainty that we're working under and justifies OpenVic2's correct approach to this. Not knowing where Paradox stands on the project isn't really helpful, and it creates some uncertainty, but we're extremely confident in our position in this project in terms of all the legal stuff. There happens to be an IP lawyer on our team, so I think we'd rather take his word than all the armchair Discord lawyers. One of the few precedents we might have is the Victoria 2 War Analyzer, which is a third-party program that reads Victoria 2 assets and presents them differently. For example, the flags. When you launch this program, it prompts you to direct it to your Victoria 2 installation directory, and that's what OpenVic2 will do, in its classic or compatibility mode. What I just described to you about a program called OpenVic2 loading Victoria 2 assets from a copy that you own is only one of the aims of OpenVic2. It's one component. It might even be a completely separate program. As you know if you've followed this project, we're also aiming to supply our own complete set of assets so that we can have a self-contained component to this project that doesn't have the threat of Paradox hanging over it. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, the answer to these two different visions is that we aim to do both. And you will be able to choose which one to play at any given time. Do you want the more classic experience that looks exactly the same as Victoria 2, which can load your favourite existing mods? Then use that mode. Do you want to experience the newer version, much higher quality, inspired by Victoria 2, paying homage to it, with a new soundtrack and a map that has orders of magnitude more pixels than the Victoria 2 map? You won't be able to load existing mods into the fancy new OpenVic2, but it will have vastly improved modding capabilities. And Hop311 is going to talk about that in regards to the map later in this video, a notoriously tedious thing to mod in Victoria 2. The right hand side here is where we really aim to achieve greatness and go well beyond anything Victoria 2 could do, and it's the one that we talk about the most because we get to show off all these fancy new things. But at the same time, all these new assets aren't vastly different from Victoria 2, and the guiding principle of making them is to give the same feel as that game. If there's still any confusion about the OpenVic2 project and what it aims to do after that, well, I don't know, just come and ask us on the community Discord or in a comment on this video, but it should be pretty clear after that. I hope I explained it well. If anything about the project changes, I'll let you know, but that's where we stand right now. Having explained everything I just explained, the art showcase that I'm about to show you from discussion stream number 3, and is also in Dev Diary number 3, will make a lot more sense and you can hopefully appreciate them better. Janet is about to take it away for the art section.
Right. Are you going to put my work on screen?
Oh, Got your resources here.
So, what I do, what I'm working on right now is the RTO/goods at the moment. I try to kind of strike a balance between making it look similar to what was in the original Vic2 and upscaling and improving.
What you've done with these resources is essentially a smaller version of what the whole project is. A recreation or a homage to Victoria 2 and what's in Victoria 2, but slightly upgraded.
A bit of a microcosm.
Bon Marsh is working on some very lovely 3D models.
That's the one. There you go.
It looks fucking fantastic, and it's pretty well optimized, which would be great because the game's gonna have to render hundreds of these probably. It's a rather modular model so that other artists could easily replace or change the uniforms to whatever nation that soldier belongs to. Enigmatic has made a lot of concept art for uniforms.
I can't compliment his work enough. He's been quite the asset.
No pun intended.
Appreciate it greatly.
You can sort of imagine these unit references putting those uniforms onto the 3D model, and then you've got stacks moving around. Got the infantry asset on the screen. There you go.
Yes. I believe this is for the regular infantry.
This is an original asset created by the Skeleton Appears for the project, but obviously very reminiscent and similar to the original thing. Someone in the community Discord general chat earlier said, show some gameplay. I'll get these infantry assets on the screen, I'll put a couple of them next to each other and move them around and make shooting noises, and it's a better war system than Victoria 3.
Also, Tupanamba has been doing a lot of very good work with pictures for technologies.
This is Tupanamba's work, by the way, sourcing these, so credit to him, absolutely amazing. That was a showcase of some of the brilliant assets that Art Team are coming out with. I can't wait to see even more of them. While we're on that sort of topic, I'll shout out Catylist's music again. Great stuff, you've been listening to some of it throughout this video. The most difficult part of this project might be that we have to meet up and reenact real battle sound effects. Alright, onto the next topic of how we're dealing with suggestions and potential diversions from Victoria 2 mechanics. I'm about to wake up the chat here with a massive thing I'm about to shove on the screen. The suggested changes document. Is that what it's officially called, Youri?
Yeah, suggested diversions from Victoria 2.
Throughout the entire project, right back from the early days, people have come forward with loads of suggestions, because this sort of thing naturally sparks people's creativity and what they'd like to see in the game. We opened up an actual, more formal suggestions forum for people to put forward things. Go ahead, Youri, tell us all about this.
Yeah, so this document is basically, I just set this up just as a way to keep track of all of the suggestions people are making. What is Moscow? So Moscow is a way to categorize the priorities for adding these kinds of diversions. The M is for must have, S for should have, C for could have, and W for won't have. A lot of these suggestions are in could or won't have, and that's because they are changes from original Vic2. We're actually not focused on implementing changes mostly.
Just because something has won't have priority does not necessarily mean that it won't ever be present, just that in terms of priority it's relatively lower.
So if you've made a suggestion and you wondered, I wonder where the suggestion went, it's on here. There's also massive descriptions. This spreadsheet is publicly available, just go on the community server and it's in the description. Further to this topic, we're also very much in favour of having some kind of rules or settings system to dictate many of these things. I envision a system like that of Crusader Kings 2, lots of different game rules, and nice simple presets so players don't get overwhelmed, and in my opinion the default preset of rules should be one called Classic, the completely faithful experience first. So as for the community Discord, if you've ever read the novel, what's it called? Oh yes, 1984 by a certain George Orwell, that gives you an idea. We've actually got an Orwellian in here. He knows all about the Discord.
Yeah.
Now let's move on to the area where OpenVic2 has been making great progress that we can show you. We now have a map, which is quite important, or so I've heard. You're going to see a lot of works in progress in this section, so don't take anything as a finished asset. The man behind the coding aspects of the map is Hop311, or Hubert. He's also had a lot of help from Orwellian. I added that little advert for the community Discord so we could include him in some way. In particular, what he's been doing for the map is adjacencies. The man behind physically drawing the map is Kazder, whose profile pic lives rent-free in my mind because it looks like Bocohen. For this section you're going to hear from Hop and Kazder directly, who better to explain it than them. And Catylist will walk you through a very nice little integration we've done for testing purposes with one of the biggest Victoria 2 mods.
Compatibility mode using your own copy of the Vic2 assets will be there for a completely authentic Vic2 experience, or as authentic as possible. You can get a map that looks exactly like Vic2's because it will be using the same file. However, our own original copies of the assets, which have been made completely by us, those are going to be different. I've taken the rough way that Vic2 defines its maps and reinvented it in terms of removing some of the more annoying parts to make modding easier. When you're adding a new province, rather than having to add a new unique number, you can just add a string like prov_London. Then in all of the later modding, let's say modding an event that does something to London, you can reference prov London rather than having to look up the ID in order to understand what part of the world you're talking about. There are two main issues with modding Vic2 maps. Firstly, the file format is a bit annoying. Vic2 maps are flipped upside down. This is very tedious when editing the map, since you obviously have to flip it when you start editing, flip it back when you finish. As well as this, there are issues with being able to tell what you're editing, where you want to edit, and what colors to use. I have no doubt that we are going to have a custom map editor written in Godot, essentially on top of OpenVic2, so you can see the map as it appears in the game as you edit it. Kaz made a map which was just land and water, so just to outline the silhouette of the world.
Look at that subtle off-white coloring. The tasteful thickness of it. Oh my god. It even has a watermark.
I've been working on the actual visual side of the map, basically the coastline, and as well as that, now I'm working on the lakes. Soon I'll do the rivers after that. The Paradox map is quite weird, to put it mildly. The whole of the new world is shifted very noticeably north, which we have corrected. We include a lot more of the Northern Hemisphere, so you can see Baffin Island and Victoria Island in Canada and more of the northern Russian coast. Correcting weird things like that is essentially one of the things that personally I think a lot of the art team take pleasure in doing.
Kaz made a map which was land and water. In order to turn that into a province map, you need to obviously split it down further into both sea provinces, land provinces. Rather than splitting it into small provinces, straight away we've just split the map into quite broad areas, mostly for testing purposes, roughly split up Europe and Asia. It's basically the geographical side of it in terms of the land, and then all we have left to do now is the borders. The terrain that is drawn on the map is chosen by a lookup table texture similar to the province texture, with different colors obviously, because the terrain and the provinces don't always exactly match up. We've got the code side of that working, but we're still in the process of making terrain textures.
At the moment, we're using the current textures in a pretty crude way, I suppose, for testing purposes. We've drawn out these really basic regions just to prove that we can split it up by region. Because they're so large, we pick massive tracts of farmland textures. If you actually look at the individual textures, they're extremely good. For testing purposes, we've loaded in the TGC map to see what it would look like with a slightly more naturalistic texture mapping.
Because of the parsing for the textures, what it's doing at the moment is it's slightly pixelating the border between the sea and the land, which makes the map look lower quality than it actually is. If you see the weird one where we've got our different terrains with the provinces over and it looks quite janky, you'll actually notice that the coasts are extremely high resolution. I think this is most easy to see in the dev diary, where we'll be posting a Japan, Korea and mainland northern China comparison.
Catylist has launched an excellent initiative, which is the crowdsourcing of events, decisions and achievements, or as I like to call it, LARP. This has been a great way for the community to contribute to the project outside of the coding and all that. If you feel like any parts of the world were severely lacking on flavour, I'm looking at you South America, and you'd like to contribute, you can check it out on the community Discord server. Catylist and I had a chat about it, which will explain everything.
This is definitely one of the things I'm most pleased with, I would say, is the crowdsourcing. There's the achievements, the events and decisions, and the events and decisions are quite interlinked. We've seen some really good flavour and a lot of really good discussion.
This sort of stuff still goes back to the previous question of classic or compatible mode as well, where these decisions and flavours fit in.
Yeah.
So in a classic mode, you just really want, well, it'll be loading the Vic2 asset, it'll be loading the Vic2 decisions and events anyway, and no achievements.
Yes, no achievements.
It's going to be the classic. So in beautiful new OpenVic2, will all the flavour that we're seeing develop in those channels be in it? Will there be different packs? Will there be different rules? And what is going to be in OpenVic2 to cover the standard events that we already have everywhere?
Yes, so they'll be enableable in the game rules. If you want mainly just the cut down flavour and the more base Vic2 flavour, then you can absolutely go for that.
Yeah.
Anyone can contribute if you're in the Discord. We have a guide on how to format your posts. So far the response to the crowdsourcing has been really encouraging. We've really loved looking through some of the submissions.
And that about covers it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video interesting, informative about the project, and enjoyable. If you did so, please give it a like. Leave a comment as well, tell us what you think about the project, and if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to give them either in the comments here or in the community Discord, which you should definitely join. Stay tuned for further updates, there will definitely be more discussion streams. As for supporting this channel so I can keep making content about OpenVic2 and Victoria 2 and other stuff, I'd greatly appreciate it if you supported me on Patreon. Once again, thanks for watching, have a nice day, and I'll see you later.